Was Attorney General William Barr's letter about the Mueller investigation to the Congressional Judiciary Committees really total exoneration, as President Trump tweeted? Likelihood of Russia collusion was reported tens of thousands of times and may even won a Pulitzer Prize. How is it possible for so many media to be so wrong for so long? Does it mean more investigations are coming? And what does it mean for the futures of the media that have been pushing this narrative, and ultimately for the upcoming 2020 presidential campaign? This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Jan Jekielek. Today we welcome back Jason Meister, a Trump 2020 Campaign Advisory Board member who was also on the Trump 2016 campaign. We discuss his thoughts on Attorney General Barr's letter, Trump derangement syndrome, how the fake Steele dossier was critical to starting the investigation, and how Americans can heal from the madness of the last 2 years. Jason, it's great to have you back.
Thanks for having me.
So, back in February 2018, over a year ago now, you actually wrote a column for us for the Epoch Times. And I'm going to quote something to you that you wrote in there, which I thought was fascinating. You wrote, "Mueller's investigation is a total sham, and the president should treat it as such. Mueller should be put to the test. Let him indict whoever he has evidence to indict, and then pack his bags." I mean, it seems like things have actually played out as you were suggesting then. And what I want to know is, what made you so sure of your outcome at the time?
Well, it's a good question. I think that if you're paying attention, if you're consuming news from reliable sources, like the Epoch Times, you guys have been on top of this story since day one. And I think that it was just my acute sense of the news and staying on top of what was actually occurring. This was the greatest political scandal in American history. It makes Watergate look like a nothing situation. And it's the story of our time. The fact that President Trump was able to successfully win the election with this conspiracy theory sort of pointed at him is just one of the most amazing political feats in American history. So what a story that we get to talk about today and finally have behind us.
So it was a very bold thing to say, I think, that, especially given what we saw in a lot of media back then, and a lot of suggestions that Mueller is going to come in, he's going to indict President Trump's family, he's going to indict the president himself. It's just moments away. The evidence is coming. The evidence is coming. But you went out on a limb and you said, let this play out. Let this play out. Let's see what actually comes of it.
Right.
And I think there weren't a lot of people saying that. Right?
No, there definitely wasn't. But you could tell.
That believed he was innocent. Can you expand on that a little bit? How is it that you had the courage to be so unequivocal in this?
Yeah, look, this was a result of not accepting the results of an election, of a duly elected president, okay? There was no collusion. The American people voted for a president, and he won. He didn't go to Russia. He went to the states that he needed to win the Electoral College. And Hillary Clinton didn't do that. She was inefficient in her policies. There was criminal behavior behind her. And so I think that really this was the result of not accepting the results of an election, and that's why this all unfolded.
So let me read a quote here. This is actually a tweet from the president. He wrote, "No collusion, no obstruction, complete and total exoneration, keep America great." And is what we're seeing truly total exoneration? I'm seeing, a lot of folks not agreeing with that statement out there.
Right. They don't want to lay in the beds that they made for themselves. This is a complete exoneration of the president and his campaign. This was a conspiracy theory that was pushed for 2 years. You had 2,800 subpoenas. You had 500 witnesses. You had 500 search warrants. You had 280 some odd communications that were looked at. You had 13 foreign government intel investigations. This was a complete exoneration. It couldn't get more of an exoneration for the president. This is a great day for the president, but now it's time to look at how this all unfolded. What actually occurred? How did this investigation get open to begin with? That's what the American people need to really heal and move on from this.
So, President Trump has been saying all along no collusion. We've seen it a few times, right? I guess my question is, what else do you think that he's been right on that the media don't seem to understand?
The media don't understand a lot. They've been pushing fake news.
And let's say the legacy media, because there's certainly some media out there.
There's some, but it's very limited.
Yeah.
Look at the Covington boys story. Look at the Jussie Smollett story. Look at the Russian collusion hoax story. I mean, if you just look over the last 6 months, every story, one after the next, was fake. It was a narrative that the liberal mainstream media wanted to push and brainwash Americans to think one thing when the reality was the complete opposite. And so they've taken a huge blow. I mean, this president is a pragmatist. He's a problem solver. It's not about any longer the Democrats or the Republicans. It's about solving America's problems and making this country great again. And I think that what the media doesn't understand is that this president is not an ideologue, and he's not going to fit into a little box or into their narrative. And what's happened is, many people have called it Trump derangement syndrome.
Right.
So this is a real thing, and it's really just it's driven people to hysteria, like the Russian collusion stuff that's been sort of put out there into the media in sort of a brainwashing way, just like the way that they put the Smollett story or the Covington boys story. So I think that it's had a major blow to the legacy media.
So I guess this is kind of an opportunity for the legacy media to do some soul searching. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's time. I don't know if it will actually happen, but I think that we are at a moment in history, in American history, for some self-reflection and for some honest reporters and networks to think really long and hard about what has unfolded over the last 2 years. And do they want to exist? Okay, because they will go extinct, like the dinosaurs. No, seriously, I'm not kidding. Social media, in some respects, has put a check on the legacy media. And that's why you had some of these stories that were totally fake, fraud stories, corrected by people, individuals that had social media accounts that, like a video camera like where the Covington boys were, and they can see what actually happened. And what happens is that video goes viral on social media, and then all Americans can see that what was being pushed upon them and what they were being brainwashed with was completely not true.
Yeah, so actually I've heard a lot, and I remember watching a kind of a back and forth on CNN with Chris Cuomo and Matt Schlapp about this, where Chris Cuomo was talking about, oh, look, the president lies, he lies, and he just, he wouldn't, let Matt get a word in. And this seems to be a very common, let's call it a narrative, a common statement. Yet in this situation, I mean, surely there was some evidence to support this whole Russia collusion thing. How did this all happen? Could this just be a complete and total lie from the beginning? It's just hard to fathom, I think, for many of our viewers.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate, but it is a sham. Okay. You basically had a fake dossier, the fake Trump dossier, which was paid for by Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Convention. It was then taken to the high-ups at the Obama administration. They then went to the FISA court, okay, to get a warrant to spy on the opposition candidate and his campaign, all, by the way, private U.S. citizens. And that abuse of the FISA courts and that abuse of our system is what you're seeing play out in this Mueller investigation. Not one indictment of any single individual after 2 years of investigating. Not one indictment. It's a complete sham. And
well, there were some indictments. Right?
Well, there was, but none of them, not one. And you'll hear this in the media that there was this indictment and that. Not one indictment having anything remotely to do with Russia or collusion. And that's a very important thing to point out. They're victims of Russiagate, which is the biggest disinformation campaign in American history.
So what do you make of, this just jumped to me, what do you make of Attorney General Barr basically be given the license from Mueller to decide based on the evidence, hey, was there obstruction or not? What do you make of Mueller deciding to walk away from answering that question?
I don't make much of it. I think that Mueller was the principal who conducted the investigation, and he's giving it to a third party to sort of read through it and then deliver the results to the American people, and he did.
So there's a lot of people, actually, of all stripes, politically, that are calling for a full release of the report. What do you make of that?
I think that's great. I think transparency is a great thing. I think we need transparency to heal from this terrible collusion hysteria that's gone on for 2 years. It's ripped this country apart. The media has dragged us through the mud, and I think it's time for transparency so that all Americans can see the sham that it is.
So you're kind of advocating for more investigation, just a shift of the focus? Is that what
I think it's time for the real investigation. The investigation into Hillary Clinton, into the DNC, into the fake dossier, into the Steele dossier that created this entire mess, into Comey, into all the perpetrators of this Russian collusion hoax. I think it's very important. We live in a country where there's the rule of law, and people that break the law need to be punished for those laws that were broken. I think that we need to, as a country, heal and figure out how we got into the mess that we're in. You can't just have a sham for 2 years, 2,800 subpoenas, 500 witnesses, 500 search warrants, and not have any rational reason for that, and not have any understanding of where that came from and why we're here today.
So Senator Lindsey Graham, the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee, he seems to agree with your idea that there should be an investigation in this area, and he's actually inviting Barr to testify. I also heard that Congressman Nadler is also inviting the Attorney General Barr to testify. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts?
I think that they should come and testify. We should hear what they have to say under oath. I think that, again, in order for this country to heal after 2 years of being ripped apart, and I actually do feel bad for people that believed in this nonsense. You know, people go about their lives every day. They go to work. They take care of their families. They're not in the weeds on this stuff. And you put on CNN, you put on MSNBC, and it's 24 hours a day, complete nonsense stories. If you read, I don't know the numbers, but the amount of stories per day, I think it was like 13 stories per day on this for the last 2 years. The American people were brainwashed into believing a complete hoax, and I think that in order to heal and get beyond this, we need to really understand the truth, and the American people need to understand the fake dossier. How did we get a FISA warrant? How did Obama's administration get a FISA warrant to spy on the opposition candidate? Just think about that for a second. I mean, that's a banana republic. We have an election, okay? We have a Democrat running and a Republican running, and the sitting president of the United States of America on the Democrat side was spying on the opposition campaign and candidate for president.
Allegedly, right.
He was spying on it. No, we know that there was wiretaps. We know that that they were looking, that the FBI was looking
right.
at the Trump campaign. We know that there were phone taps and email taps. And why were those phones and emails tapped? Because of the fake dossier, which was paid for by Hillary Clinton and the DNC. We need to get to the bottom of this. It's a very serious matter. So I hope that the Republicans and I hope that the Trump administration do.
So you feel there's some kind of a reckoning coming. The reason I'm asking this is because I've seen a lot of kind of cynical chatter in the social media that, so the narrative will just shift, and there will be some other issues. Perhaps there's all sorts of investigations, I think 81 or something like this, different investigations that are the really important thing. Actually, maybe the Mueller report, the investigation isn't that important.
Right. That's what they're saying today.
Yeah, and a few folks have said, well, wait a sec, this was 2 years. This is, like you said, the biggest deal. It's a bigger deal than Watergate, so it's not going to go away so fast. It's
not going to go away fast, and the president and this administration has been focused on the American people, on the economy, on tax reform, and has been making America great again from the time he's taken his position in office. And he will continue to do so going forward. And by the way, I think that with this cloud off of him and his administration, he's going to do even better than before. But I think that it is important, it is vitally important to this country that we get to the bottom of how this all came about. How did this sham, hoax, collusion, illusion come about to begin with?
So, it just occurred to me that I think there's even been Pulitzer Prizes that have been won on the basis of reporting around Russia collusion. What does this conclusion mean for the media and the outlook for the legacy media?
I think that this past weekend with the Mueller report totally exonerating the president after 2 years of a fake hoax, it puts the media in a terrible place. I think that they've lost tremendous credibility. I mean, they were losing credibility leading up to this, but it was a major blow. And I think that people, I mean, I can't imagine, I was thinking about this morning, as people were getting up for work and they were getting dressed and they put on the news like I did, how could you even put on CNN? How could you put on MSNBC and actually watch that? I mean, you might as well, like my children, watch Bugs Bunny. There is no reality to what was being pushed over the last 2 years. How could they have any credibility left for you to even give them a second of your time? And so I do think it was a massive blow to the mainstream media, mostly the liberal mainstream media. I think that it will have a huge impact on the 2020 race.
Well, yeah, so that's actually is the big question, isn't it? I imagine that the president will be discussing this exoneration for at least a bit of time. It's obviously incredibly important for the American people to know, what the Department of Justice thinks about all of this.
Right.
What do you feel the outlook? How do you feel the outlook changes for 2020, or does it? Yeah.
I think it does change a lot. I think that you had, well, first of all, on the one hand, you had 2020 Democrat contenders that are vying for the nomination, pushing this complete hoax for 2 years as well. Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, we've all heard quotes from them believing in this nonsense. So I think that that's going to have a real impact on them. I think I saw over the weekend Beto O'Rourke giving a speech somewhere in a gymnasium, and he was pushing the collusion delusion. So I think that is going to have a huge impact on the 2020 race. But I think the broader thing that I see is the fact that President Trump ran on that there's this establishment and that he's running against the establishment. I think that that's the broader theme. The media, the corrupt politicians, like what happened in the 2016 election, the fake dossier, it's all true. His criticism of the media being totally at odds with him and constantly giving him negative press and jumping down his, running against him on the collusion stuff. That is all feeding into what he's been saying, and so he's right about it, and it's a vindication. So I think it's having a huge impact in 2020. So
there were several people, even some very prominent people, like the head of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, DNC Chairman Tom Perez. They've said. I hope I'm saying this right, but that they've seen evidence of collusion. I believe that something like that was said by both of those people. What do you make of that?
What do I make of it? We spent $35 million. Like I said earlier, there were 2,800 subpoenas, 500 witnesses, 500 search warrants. There was no collusion. And Mueller said in his report that there was no collusion between President Trump, his campaign, and the Russians. So I think that it's such a disgrace that politicians at the highest levels of our government are, even after Mueller comes out with a report, saying these types of things and pushing this fake fraud onto the American people. I think we've had enough of it, and now it's time to get to the bottom of it.
Okay, so what would you recommend for folks that have gone out on a limb and said this, or do you think there is something that they have tangible that they got a hold of?
No, I mean they have nothing. That's why we're here where we are today. I think that it's a dereliction of their duties. as who we've elected. I think that it takes, again, it's a major blow to their credibility as individuals. They've been pushing this hoax for 2 years, and I think that we need to investigate what actually occurred here. How did this fake dossier that was paid for by Clinton and the DNC get into the hands of a FISA court for a warrant? Who at the Obama administration knew about this, and how did they go about getting the FISA warrant? These abuses Devin Nunes has spoken out about over the last 2 years. I think we need to get to the bottom of all that. And again, I don't think Americans can heal until they get to the bottom of it.
And ostensibly, you know, no collusion basically says whatever they used to get that spying in the first place was simply not enough because FISA warrants are it's a very big deal to get one of those things, especially for an American, from what I understand.
That's right. So look, I think that we do have some investigating to do. I think we've already found out a lot about this fake dossier. There's a lot more to find out. But I think that, again, we live in a country that has a rule of law, and we need to stand by the rule of law. And people that break the laws in our country have to be punished for doing so.
Jason, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.